Welcome to the Pioneer Podcast, brought to you by Lex Libertas. This is Ernst Roots. I want to use today's episode to do a little housekeeping. I'm doing this recording from Cape Town, where we are spending the week to have a whole bunch of meetings and engagements, and I will give some feedback on that later on in this episode. But I want to talk primarily about where we are as Lex Libertas, what we have been doing, and also what we plan on doing in the months ahead and the year 2026 that is just around the corner. But before we dive right into that, let me remind you to subscribe to this channel. We have grown significantly since the beginning of this year, starting out with around 25,000 subscribers. We are now close to 80,000 subscribers, and we want to breach the 100,000 subscribers mark, not just for the sake of having 100,000 subscribers, but also because once we have breached that goal, we want to start using this channel to have a much bigger and more significant international focus, to approach bigger guests throughout the world, not just in South Africa. So help us reach 100,000 subscribers. You can click on the subscribe button right now. So let's get into it. We're in Cape Town at the moment, and we have spent the week in Cape Town. As this podcast is being published, we are on our way back to Pretoria, and we've had so many meetings, it's difficult to count. We did some podcast interviews and so forth, but the main focus of our trip to Cape Town is to reach out to people who have already signed up as contributors to Lex Libertas, and who have also indicated that they want to become involved more actively with our work through the Lex Libertas Club. Now, we were not able to meet with every person who has done that, who has signed up in this regard during this week. We will keep doing this, and we plan on reaching out to Cape Town in a more comprehensive way, or to the Western Cape, by establishing a Lex Libertas Club chapter, you might say, in the Western Cape early in 2026. Just recently, we launched the Pretoria version of the Lex Libertas Club, and we will be sending out more information to our contributors shortly about upcoming workshops, discussion groups, and so forth, where we want to get people more actively involved. But I want to talk in this video about what that involvement could entail. In other words, if you are a Lex Libertas contributor, what could you potentially do within the context of this organization? But if we were to take a step back, we can give some context by saying that Lex Libertas was announced in its first proto version on the 7th of March this year. Back then it was called the Pioneer Initiative. And at the time we only had a website and a video. And we were really astonished by the extent to which support streamed in after we published that first video. And we're really grateful for that, because that made us possible to launch this organization. Then with our first contributors who have signed up, we had some online contributors meetings, we had some physical meetings and some workshops. We then formalized the institution in a more finalized version, which we launched on the 15th of May this year, where we announced the name Lex Libertas, the vision, the mission, and so forth. And we've been working on building this institution since then. We recently published a video about our plan. The plan is on our website. It is called the business plan of Lex Libertas, but it might as well be called the plan of action or the political plan. I'm going to put the link up to the video in which we discuss that plan at the end of this video. If you haven't seen it, I would really encourage you to watch that. The short version of that plan is that we need to do 5 things. And before I give you the 5 things, let me first say that Lex Libertas is a think tank and an advocacy group. It's a think tank in the sense that we have a clearly defined vision statement, which is that we need a viable political order for the peoples of South Africa, and a mission statement, which is how are we going to achieve that, which we discuss in our plan. The plan then is built around 5 things that we intend on doing. Now, with an objective as ambitious as ours, you might say, how is it ever going to be possible to change the political dispensation in South Africa for the better? But if you look at the plan and the 5 points of our plan, I'm sure any reasonable person would agree that it is actually possible. The difficulty is not in working out a plan on how to achieve this, but on implementing that plan, which is what we intend to do. And the reason why no one has done that so far is probably because there hasn't been an institution that is the sole focus of working towards this thus far. And also because in order to do these things, you need a well-functioning single-issue institution working actively towards achieving the implementation of this plan. Now, the plan consists of 5 steps, which I'm only going to go through very quickly because I've discussed them more comprehensively in the document, which you can find on our website, and also in the video for which I will share the link. And the point about these 5 steps is we need to do all 5, and they need to be connected to each other. It needs to be an interconnected plan, or a flywheel, as Jim Collins would call it. In other sense, that doing any one of these 5 things would not be sufficient. But when we do each of these 5 continuously and in conjunction with each other, we believe that we will indeed achieve this vision of ours. And so the short version of the plan is, firstly, we need to do proper research. That entails research about where South Africa is at the moment, what's going on in South Africa. But it also includes research about what a better dispensation or order could look like for the peoples of South Africa. And then thirdly, it also includes doing research on how to bridge that gap. In other words, strategic research. What ought to be done to move from where we are to where we ought to be? So that's the first leg, is research. The second is local advocacy or local support, steunwerving, as we say in Afrikaans. And that implies reaching out to the various communities and peoples of South Africa about this initiative, getting more and more people on board to support this goal, and getting people into a movement that supports this initiative of decentralizing the political system, promoting autonomy and self-governance. The third is international support. And that implies growing international recognition that the pursuit of autonomy, the pursuit of self-governance in South Africa is a legitimate pursuit. It also implies international support, which could include things like funding. It could also include practical actions. It could also include diplomatic pressure, policy positions, and so forth. And then the fourth step, after research, local advocacy, international advocacy, the fourth step is to convert that into tangible action, practical action. We need to go out and do things that would move us closer to this goal, which means that we cannot just talk about a solution. We have to do things that would move us closer to that. And that could include a variety of things. It could include conferences. It could include work in communities and so forth. It could also include things like civil disobedience campaigns. It could also include things like tax protests and so forth. And we will be doing research on these issues in the coming year, which is what I want to talk with you about in this video. And then the fifth part, or the fifth component of our strategy, is creating de facto realities. And what we mean by that is that there's a difference between theory and reality, or between the legal framework and the actual reality on ground level in South Africa. And so what is happening in South Africa is that de facto, in other words, in the real life, a political vacuum or a void has been created, largely through government incompetence, and that this void has to be filled with well-functioning, well-organized communities that are taking control of their own affairs. There are a lot of institutions doing great work in this regard. We need to support them. We need to do research on how to do this more efficiently, more strategically, and we need to become involved with practical actions in this regard. Now, Lex Libertas, as I said, is a think tank combined with an advocacy group. Now, there are many think tanks all over the world, and the whole think tank notion might seem a bit strange to a lot of people or unfamiliar to people in South Africa, although South Africa has some very influential think tanks, including the IRR, the Free Market Foundation, the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, and some others. But throughout the world, and especially the Western world, the USA and European countries, but also in the East, think tanks have always had, or especially over the last century or so, has had a significant influence in shaping the political landscape. Think tanks are primarily concerned with publishing research, publishing papers about where we are, where we need to be, and what ought to be done. But what is unique about Lex Libertas, and what excites me in particular, is that we don't intend to present this think tank as a group of nerds doing research in their office buildings and pushing out papers for people to read. We're going to present Lex Libertas as an interactive, participatory think tank, a think tank through which people can contribute, a think tank with regard to which people can become involved. And what is really fascinating and incredible since we started this initiative is just the amount of papers we have received from our contributors, people who have written to us, who have written documents, research papers about what they think the solution is, what could be done about various matters. And this is something that we intend to use much more comprehensively. By making Lex Libertas a participatory think tank that focuses on getting people involved and not just communicating in a one-way direction. And this is why we launched the Lex Libertas Club and why we intend to roll out the club. Now, we are very grateful for the support the club has received. There are already enough people, at least in Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Cape Town, and I'm sure in some other parts of the country, I believe Bloemfontein as well, where we already have more than enough people who are not just contributors, but who have indicated to us that they want to be actively involved with rolling out these structures. Unfortunately, in terms of capacity, we are still limited because we are a very new organization. We're just a few months old. We are growing, but we don't yet have the capacity to do as many things that we would like to do simultaneously. We have to do it one by one. We're also excited about the fact that there is significant interest outside of South Africa to start Lex Libertas chapters or branches. We might call them circles. We will discuss this with our contributors. But as I said, we cannot do all of these things at once. So the focus for now is getting the Pretoria structure up and running, then getting the Cape Town structure or Western Cape structure up and running, and then expanding from there. So I want to say right now, if you are interested in becoming more actively involved in terms of what I have already said, but also in terms of what I'm going to say further on in this video, there is a link in the description and in the comments that you can click on to let us know, and we will reach out to you and make sure that you do actively get involved. Through the Lex Libertas Club, we plan on doing a variety of things. We don't want to put the entire plan down as something that we have discussed as our staff and within the context of our board. We want to put it down as a proposal or a suggestion and then discuss it with you, our contributors, which we are going to do in the coming month. But let me say where we are now. So the club structures for now could be described as a structure through which you could do at least three things. And I should add that there is a particular focus on young people, although not exclusively. But the three things for now is there would be a social element to that. In other words, gatherings where people can have a braai or some type of an activity with like-minded people. And we've noticed that especially among young people, there is a need for this. People to have social engagements with like-minded people, especially within the context of South Africa, of course. The second would be self-development. And this is something that is especially important for our younger contributors and something that they have actually encouraged us to include as a particular focus. The opportunity for young people in their 20s, perhaps even school children, people in their 30s and so forth, but older people as well, to participate in doing courses, having conversations about particular ideas through which they can develop their own thoughts, arguments, and their own intellectual journey. And the third is for our contributors to be involved with practical actions, to actually do things that would help move Lex Libertas closer to its goal. But there are some practical things that we have already embarked on. One is something that we recently announced, which is the media monitoring platform. Now, I'm very excited to talk to you about our plans in terms of setting up a media monitoring platform in South Africa. The short version of the context is that we received a letter from the editorial team at News24 who were concerned about an opinion we expressed that News24 is, through its reporting on farm murders, creating a distorted narrative and, in a sense, contributing to the problem as opposed to contributing to a solution. They, of course, vehemently deny this, and they even want us to publish a public apology or correction. News24 provided us with a list of articles that they have published throughout the years where they report on farm attacks, or so they say. We are going through these reports currently, and we are going to publish a comprehensive paper on that when we are done. But it is very important that we establish some form of a structure that would keep the media in check. Why is this so important? It is extremely important because the media is the primary way through which people get information. But also, unfortunately, many of the mainstream media outlets in South Africa have become so consumed in political ideology that they seem to have lost the ability or the capacity to report on the news objectively. And so, where the media are supposed to keep the public in check through fact-checking and so forth, we are unfortunately at the point where the public has to keep the media in check. And how do we plan on doing that? We plan on doing research on what the media is saying, how the media is reporting on South Africa. That will include quantitative research. In other words, analyzing what the media is doing, what they are saying, how they are reporting, and expressing that in terms of percentages, numbers of stories written on particular topics, as opposed to other topics that are completely ignored or downplayed and so forth. But we also plan on doing this through qualitative research, which implies responding to claims that were made in the media. We've already found that we need to fact check some of the media's fact checking, because unfortunately we find that in many cases when media outlets in South Africa publish fact checks, those fact checks are full of mistakes, and people who do not have access to the information wouldn't know that. And so we need to respond to that. But also, you could put it differently. You could say that our media monitoring initiative would have two focus areas. The one would be on focusing on particular news outlets or particular media institutions, including issues like who are funding these institutions, what is their editorial policy, or how could we describe their editorial policy based on the editorial articles that they publish? What are their most important focus areas? To what extent have they distorted narratives on South Africa and so forth? But then also not just focusing on media outlets, but on particular topics or themes in South Africa and how the media is dealing with themes like these. How is the media reporting, for example, on the presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa? How is the media reporting on a topic like farm attacks or farm murders? How is the media reporting on expropriation without compensation, on black economic empowerment, and so forth? So we need to do all of these things. But what excites me about this would not simply be researchers sitting in their offices doing research and publishing it. It is going to be a participatory process. In other words, we want our contributors to be actively involved with this, to sign up to help in their own small way. And we have a lot in mind in terms of how we're going to roll that out, how we want to create a group of people, a community of people that are going to help to keep the media in check by monitoring what they publish, how they publish it, fact-checking, and so forth. Of course, when you do a public participatory process like that, you have to do quality control, but we are ready to do all of these things. Now, what is fantastic about this initiative is maybe a week ago, we announced that we plan on doing this. Maybe you watched the original video where we discussed this, and we said that if people are interested in helping, in other words, not just if you think this is a good idea, but if you want to be actively involved in this process, click on the link below and sign up, and we will reach out to you and we will involve you in that process. And so far, more than 600 people have done that. More than 600 people have said to us that not only do they support the initiative, they want to be actively involved with this, which is very exciting. Now, this is not to say that 600 people are going to be actively involved at the end of the day, but we are currently already reaching out to everyone who has indicated that they intend to be involved in this way, to involve them with how we're going to do the process. We're going to have an online meeting soon with everyone who has signed up, and there is still time. So there is a link at the bottom of this video in the description as well, where you can click to sign up, and we will then make sure that you are involved with this. So it's much bigger than just a little group of people. It's a vast network of people who have indicated that they want to be actively involved with monitoring the media in South Africa, who have volunteered to do some work in this regard. And we have some incredible ideas on what you can do. Just imagine the possibilities. If you have hundreds of people who have signed up to help, just imagine all the things you could do in this regard. We are very excited about that. If you are still interested, if you are interested in doing this and you haven't filled in the form, you can do so. Click below, and we're going to have an online meeting soon where we're going to discuss how we are going to move forward with this. It's not just people who are interested who have signed up, people also who are experts, who have postgraduate degrees in journalism and political science and so forth, people who are skilled in doing this type of research, who are very equipped and who have experience in this have also signed up. And so we are going to do something quite incredible. If you don't believe us, you can just wait and see. But other than the media monitoring initiative, we have some other ideas. And one idea that we are quite excited about is something that wasn't my idea, it wasn't our idea in terms of the core team working on this. But we are very excited about this, and we are particularly excited about the fact that this was a suggestion that came from our contributors, people who have become involved with Lex Libertas, saying this is something that we really want to do. And that idea is to start a book club. And what's even more exciting is that this idea came from young people, students, people in their 20s, who have said that they want to read about history. They want to read about current affairs. They want to read about philosophy. They want to read about what's going on in the world, and they want to read about proper arguments to participate in the battle of ideas. But they don't want to do that alone because they don't know what to read. And sometimes you read something and you don't know how to make sense of what you have read. And so we have set up this structure through which our contributors would be able to sign up for the Lex Libertas Book Club, which will imply selecting a variety of books that we will all read and we will all then discuss. We will have online meetings about that. We will have actual physical workshops, discussions about these books that we're reading. There will be a list of books which you can also read in your own time. We'll publish reviews, discussions, interviews, and so forth. We have a lot of ideas, and we're going to share some more about that in the month to follow. And we want to launch this book club. We're going to want to get people involved right now, and there will be a link below, so that we can launch this in the run-up to 2026 so that we can start implementing this initiative in 2026. But then also we want to channel this energy into practical action. We're not just an institution focused on book clubs and so forth. That is very important. Self-development is very important. Talking about ideas, strengthening ourselves, or sharpening the saw, as they say in the battle of ideas, is extremely important. But that has to go somewhere. And so we're going to channel this into real, practical, tangible action. And that is something that we are very excited about. Now, I want to say before we conclude that especially over the last week in Cape Town, where we spoke with many people, 5-6 meetings a day, we have had so many ideas coming in from our contributors. This is what you need to do. You need to go to, and I want to help. I want to go to this community and I want to do this. There are so many ideas on the table that we have this wonderful problem that we have too many ideas, way too many for us to implement all at the same time. So we have to prioritize. And we need to remember that this is a very new initiative. It is just a few months old. And we need to grow Lex Libertas up to the point where we can implement these ideas more comprehensively. We have ideas about how to use blockchain and crypto and digital currency in the pursuit of promoting decentralization. There are ideas of forms of tax protests. There are ideas of actual, practical, tangible things to go out and do in communities. There are ideas about conferences that have to be organized within South Africa, but also abroad. Research papers that have to be written about particular topics, about particular themes, about particular solutions. And we are going to roll these things out, but we need to do this according to our capacity. And that is why it's important to stress that we are still in the establishment phase of Lex Libertas. And in this establishment phase, even though we have this plan of the 5 things that we need to do, for now, we are going to focus primarily on 2 things. We have one overarching external objective and one overarching internal objective. The external objective is to bring the notion of self-governance as a solution, of decentralizing the system, into the mainstream conversation in South Africa. We need to bring this into the mainstream so that more and more people talk about self-governance as the solution to South Africa's problems, as opposed to some policy changes, some law that has to change, which would then lead to a macro political solution, or some party that has to win the election. Even if a different party, a better party, were to win the election, the structural problems would not go away. And so our first external objective is to bring the idea or the solution of self-governance into the mainstream, to legitimize the notion of self-governance, to explain that what underpins the failure of the ANC government is the same thing that underpinned the failure of the National Party government, and the same thing that underpinned the failure of the unionization of South Africa when South Africa was governed by the British. And that is that the system is highly centralized and that the system is governed according to racial lines. We need to break away from that, and we need to bring this solution into the mainstream. That is our primary short-term external objective. Our primary short-term internal objective is to grow the institution, to get more people involved so that we are able to do much more. And in order to achieve this, we need to recruit 4,000 people to be monthly contributors. Now, quite a lot of people have made once-off donations to Lex Libertas, big once-off donations, and we are very grateful for that because we can implement particular projects with once-off donations. And we really want to encourage entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals who are interested in supporting to reach out to us so that we can have a conversation about some big projects that we intend on implementing and how we can make sure that these are implemented. And that is very important, and we're going to keep pursuing that. But while we pursue that, what we need to do is to get at least 4,000 people to sign up as monthly contributors. Now, ever since we started reaching out to people on a more tangible, practical way, ever since we got my colleague Pieter Ben Roos on our team, with whom many of you might have spoken or engaged with over the last few months. We have accelerated our growth, and we are very happy about that. We are around 800 monthly contributors at the moment, but we can see that the growth has accelerated. And so if you are interested in supporting, I would really like to encourage you to do that by clicking on the link. But even if you have already signed up, you can support by reaching out to Pieter Ben, link below, and to putting him in touch with people who you think might also become contributors, encouraging people in your community, in your family, and so forth to contribute so that we can reach this goal, so that we can move over to a next phase for Lex Libertas. And so that brings us to the call to action. And there are two ways. You will see there are two links below. The one is a link to our website where you can click and fill in the form yourself and sign up as a contributor right now. It only takes about 2 minutes of your time, and it's completely within your control, and it will be done and dusted. The other is a link to a WhatsApp channel through which you can communicate with us directly. Now, my colleague Pieter Ben is on the other side of the WhatsApp, and that is especially set up for people who have more information to share with us, who want to reach out about practical involvement and so forth. And so if you can become a contributor either by clicking on the link and signing up through the website, or by engaging with my colleague Pieter Ben through the WhatsApp channel. Also, if you are interested in signing up with the book club, you can click on the WhatsApp link and we will make sure that you are signed up for that. If you are interested in signing up with this media monitoring initiative, you can click on the WhatsApp link and we will sign you up for that. And if you are interested in becoming involved with the Lex Libertas Club in general, you can click on the WhatsApp link and we will sign you up for that. With that, thank you very much for all the support. We truly appreciate the support we have received thus far, and we are very excited about the road that lies ahead.